The rain hasn't stopped for hours. Each drop seems to carry a piece of my past, heavy, cold, and unforgiving. I stand across the street from the house I once called home, watching the warm light flicker through the curtains. The laughter spilling from inside feels like a cruel echo of a life I no longer belong to. In my hand, I hold a small pink box, wrapped clumsily, the corners damp from the rain. Inside is a silver bracelet engraved with a single word: hope. It's meant for my granddaughter, the little girl I've never met, the child whose existence has kept me alive through 9 years of exile. My fingers tremble as I press the doorbell. The sound echoes in my chest like a heartbeat I don't trust anymore. For a moment, no one comes. I can see shadows moving behind the curtains, laughter turning into quiet murmurs. The door finally opens, and standing there is my eldest son, Daniel. He looks older, stronger, and colder. His face freezes when he sees me. "Dad," his voice cracks slightly, not from emotion, from disbelief. I try to smile, though it feels wrong on my face. "Hi, Danny, it's been a while." He doesn't move. The rain drips from his hair, his jaw tightens, and I see it, the wall he's built. The same one that once pushed me out. "What are you doing here?" he asks, his tone sharp, defensive. I just wanted to see you," I whisper, "and your daughter, my granddaughter." He glances over his shoulder, panic flickering across his eyes. He doesn't want anyone to hear me. "Now's not a good time," he says, lowering his voice. "You should go." Go. That word again. 9 years, and it still cuts the same. I look past him, trying to catch a glimpse inside, the familiar hallway, the old clock I hung on that wall myself, the faint smell of cinnamon and home. I almost forget I don't belong here anymore. "Please," I say quietly, "just a few minutes. I won't stay long." Before he can answer, a soft voice drifts from inside. "Who is it, honey?" A woman appears, beautiful, kind-eyed, holding a little girl with curly hair. The girl's laughter fills the doorway. And in that single heartbeat, I see her, my granddaughter. She's real. I can't breathe. But Daniel steps forward, blocking my view. "Nobody," he mutters quickly, "just someone selling things." My heart stops. Someone selling things. That's what I've become, a stranger, a burden, an inconvenience at his doorstep. I nod slowly, forcing a smile. "Right, I shouldn't bother you then." I turn away, and the rain hides the tears that fall. Behind me, I hear the door close softly. That sound, that click, feels like the final seal on a coffin that holds everything I once loved. As I walk down the empty street, memories flood my mind, uninvited and cruel. 9 years ago, this house was filled with laughter. My wife, Maria, humming in the kitchen. Daniel and Emma chasing each other through the hallway. The smell of her cooking, the warmth of their laughter, it was my entire world. I worked long hours as a mechanic back then. I wasn't perfect. I missed birthdays, school plays, anniversaries. I thought working hard was love. I thought bringing home money meant I was doing enough. But love doesn't always speak the same language. I still remember the night everything fell apart. It was raining like tonight. I came home late, exhausted, covered in oil. The house was quiet, too quiet. Maria sat at the table, her face pale, eyes red. The kids were upstairs. "Where were you?" she asked. "Work ran late," I said, dropping my keys. "You know how it gets at the shop." Her lips trembled. "You missed Emma's school recital." I sighed, rubbing my forehead. "I know, I'm sorry. I'll make it up to her." She looked at me, something breaking behind her eyes. "You always say that." I sat across from her, reaching for her hand. "I'm trying, Maria." "Trying?" Her voice cracked. "You've been trying for years, Mark, but you're never here." The silence that followed felt heavy, the kind of silence that changes everything. That's when I noticed her phone light up on the table. A message, a man's name. I froze. "Who's that?" She pulled her hand away too quickly. And in that one small gesture, I knew. It wasn't just the late nights or the distance. It was betrayal, quiet and complete. I wanted to scream, to break something, to ask why. But instead, I just sat there, my hands shaking, staring at the woman I thought would grow old with me. "Maria," I whispered, "please tell me I'm wrong." Tears filled her eyes. I didn't mean for it to happen. Those words shattered everything. The next few weeks were chaos, fights, slammed doors, sleepless nights. The children saw everything. And when Maria finally left, they blamed me. They said I drove her away. Maybe I did. Maybe I worked too hard and loved too quietly. Maybe I missed too many moments that mattered. But I never stopped loving them. The last night I was home, Daniel stood in the hallway, eyes filled with fury and tears. "You ruined everything," he said. "Mom left because of you." "Daniel, please." I tried to reach him, but he stepped back. Emma came down the stairs, clutching her teddy bear, crying. "Why are you always making Mommy sad?" I fell to my knees, helpless. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I never meant." Daniel's voice cut through me like a blade. "Just leave, Dad. You're the reason she's gone." Those were the last words my son said to me. I remember walking out that night, the cold biting my skin, my heart numb. I didn't even pack a bag. I just left. Now, 9 years later, I'm standing where it all began and ended. I sit on a nearby bench, the rain easing into a drizzle. Streetlights flicker in the distance. I take out an old photograph from my wallet, the 4 of us at the beach, smiling like nothing could ever go wrong. My hair was darker then. Maria's eyes were full of love. The kids were still small, innocent. I trace their faces with my thumb, whispering, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." I look up again at the house, my house, and see Daniel through the window. He's laughing with his wife now, holding his daughter. The same laughter that once belonged to me. And for a brief moment, I feel proud. He made it, he built a life. Even if I wasn't part of it. A car passes, splashing water onto my shoes. I don't move. The world goes on, and I remain stuck in the same memory loop, unable to let go. I spend the night at a cheap motel nearby. The receptionist looks at me like I'm a ghost, and maybe I am, a man wandering through the ruins of his own choices. The room smells of damp carpet and loneliness. I sit on the bed, staring at the bracelet in my palm. "Tomorrow," I whisper, "I'll try again tomorrow." Sleep doesn't come easily. My mind replays everything: Maria's tears, Daniel's anger, Emma's silence, the sound of that closing door. Some wounds don't heal with time, they just learn how to hide deeper. Morning arrives quietly. The rain has stopped. The air smells of wet earth and forgiveness that never came. I walk to a nearby park, the one I used to take the kids to when they were little. The swings are still there, rusted but standing. I sit on one of them, feeling the chains creak under my weight. I can almost hear their laughter, see little Emma running toward me, her hair flying, Daniel pretending to push her higher. "Faster, Daddy," she used to yell. I close my eyes. For a moment, it feels like they're still here. But when I open them, all that's left is the wind. Later that afternoon, I go back to the house one more time. This time, I don't knock. I just stand across the street, watching. Through the window, I see my granddaughter playing near the couch, her small fingers twirling a toy car, the same kind I used to build for Daniel when he was a boy. I smile faintly. Maybe blood remembers love even when hearts forget. A neighbor passes by, glancing at me curiously. "You're Mark, right? Daniel's father." I nod slowly. She sighs. "He never talks about you, said you left." I swallow hard. Yeah, I did. But inside, I whisper no, I was pushed away. That evening, I walk back toward the train station. The sky burns orange, a cruelly beautiful sunset for a man who lost everything. As I sit on the bench waiting for the next train, I realize something. I'm not here to be forgiven. I'm here because I can't die with unfinished goodbyes. I want them to know I never stopped loving them. That even in silence, I was there, praying for their happiness from a distance. I glance at the bracelet one last time. "Tomorrow," I whisper again, "tomorrow I'll find the courage to see her properly." The train whistles in the distance. But deep down, I know tomorrow will change everything. The sun filters softly through the motel curtains, painting my wrinkled hands gold. I wake to the sound of traffic outside, distant, constant, familiar. For a moment, I forget where I am. Then I see the small pink box on the nightstand, and everything comes flooding back. I pick it up and hold it to my chest. Hope, that's what I named it. A word that once defined my life, now reduced to a single fragile object. As I sit there, I drift back to when hope was easy and love was loud. Back before everything fell apart. It was 1988, the summer of laughter. I was 29, just a man trying to make it through the world with calloused hands and big dreams. The smell of oil and gasoline clung to me like a second skin, but I didn't mind. I worked at a small auto shop downtown, long hours, small pay, but it was honest work. That's where I met her, Maria. She came in one afternoon with her old Volkswagen Beetle, hair tied up, a white dress smudged with engine grease where she tried to fix the car herself. "You think you can fix it?" she asked, hands on her hips. I laughed. "I can fix anything that's broken," I said, not realizing how much that sentence would haunt me years later. She smiled then, the kind of smile that sticks to your soul. From that moment, everything changed. We married a year later in a small church surrounded by wildflowers. I remember how she looked walking down that aisle, radiant, nervous, perfect. My mother cried the entire time, whispering that I'd finally found someone who could calm the storm in me. She was right. Maria was my calm, my reason. Our first years together were beautiful, filled with cheap dinners, long walks, and late-night laughter that echoed through our tiny apartment. We had nothing, but it felt like everything. I'd come home from the garage, my hands blackened, my back aching, and she'd hand me a cup of coffee and say, "You smell like hard work." To her, that smell meant love. When Daniel was born, I cried. I didn't even know men could cry like that, the kind that shakes your chest and breaks you open. Holding him, I made silent promises that I'd never let him feel hunger, fear, or loneliness, that I'd be the father mine never was. Then came Emma, our little firecracker. She had Maria's eyes and my stubbornness. From the moment she learned to walk, she'd follow me everywhere, dragging her toy car along the floor. We didn't have much money, but we had warmth. Maria used to say, "Love is what fills the cracks when life tries to break you." For years, that love was enough. But love, I learned, changes shape when burdened by responsibility. The kids grew, bills grew faster. The garage got busier and I got older. I started working late, sometimes double shifts. The shop owner, Frank, needed someone reliable, and I wanted to prove I could be that man. But reliability came at a cost. Maria started eating dinner alone. The kids started calling me sir instead of dad as a joke, but sometimes it didn't feel like a joke. I missed Daniel's baseball games, Emma's first dance recital. I told myself I was doing it for them, that one day they'd understand. But children don't remember the reasons, they only remember the absence. I'd walk through the door after midnight and see Maria sitting on the couch, a book open in her lap, though she wasn't really reading. She'd look up and smile, tired, polite. "You're late," she'd say softly. "Yeah," I'd reply, removing my boots. "Busy day." She'd nod, the same conversation, repeated like a ritual. One night, she finally said what she'd been holding in. "Mark," she whispered, "when was the last time we talked, really talked?" I frowned. "We're talking now." She smiled sadly. "No, we're just existing side by side." I didn't know how to answer that. I wasn't good with words, I was good with actions. But she didn't want a roof or food or stability that night. She wanted me, my time, my laughter, my attention. And I didn't know how to give that anymore. The first argument came a few weeks later. Something small, dishes, maybe, or bills. But small arguments have sharp edges when left unattended. "You don't see us anymore," she shouted. "I'm doing this for us," I shot back. "Then why does it feel like you're never here?" "Because someone has to keep this family afloat." The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel, 12 at the time, stood by the doorway, eyes wide. Emma hid behind the stairs, clutching her doll. Maria turned away, her shoulders shaking. "I didn't marry a paycheck, Mark. I married a man." Her words stung deeper than any wound I'd ever known. I wanted to hold her, to say I was sorry, but pride built walls faster than love could climb them. We went to bed without another word. Days turned into months. The distance between us became routine. Maria stopped asking how my day was. I stopped noticing her perfume, her laughter, her eyes. I told myself we were just going through a phase. Every marriage did. Then came the phone calls. She'd step outside to get some air when the phone rang. Her voice would soften in a way it didn't for me anymore. I noticed, but I didn't confront. Cowardice isn't always about fear. Sometimes it's about denial. One night, as I walked home from the shop, I saw her car parked outside the old cafe near Main Street. Through the window, I saw her laughing with him. A man I didn't know. The world stopped. I stood there for a long time, too long, watching the woman I loved share pieces of herself with someone else. I didn't go inside. I just turned around and walked home, my chest hollow, my hands trembling. When she returned that night, I was sitting in the dark. She froze when she saw me. "Where were you?" I asked. "Just out," she said quickly. "Needed some air." "With who?" "Don't do this, Mark." "Then tell me the truth," I yelled, my voice breaking. "Tell me I'm wrong." But her silence said it all. That silence destroyed us more than words ever could. After that night, things were never the same. I started sleeping on the couch. She started avoiding home. The kids noticed. They always do. Daniel became angry at me, at her, at the world. He started skipping school, slamming doors. Emma retreated into books, drawing families with smiling faces that didn't look like ours. I tried to talk to them, but my words were useless. Maria wanted a separation. She said it calmly, like she'd already mourned it long before she spoke it aloud. "I can't do this anymore, Mark." "Do what? Fight for us?" She looked down. "No, pretend we're still us." That was the night she left. I remember Emma's screams, Daniel's fury, the sound of the front door closing, the sound of my world collapsing. For months after, I tried to keep the house together. I cooked, cleaned, paid bills, made sure the kids had what they needed. But you can't glue a family back together when everyone's already chosen which piece they'll carry. The kids blamed me. "You made her leave," Daniel yelled one night. "You and your stupid job." I tried to explain, but my words fell on the same silence that once belonged to Maria. Emma stopped speaking to me altogether. She'd just nod or shrug, eyes empty. I could see her slipping away, both of them, and I was powerless to stop it. The breaking point came a year later. It was Daniel's 16th birthday. I saved up to buy him a second-hand guitar. He'd been obsessed with music for months. I came home early that day, excited. The cake was on the table, the candles ready. But when I opened the door, the house was empty. No decorations, no laughter, no kids. A note sat on the counter, went to Mom's. My heart sank. I went to Maria's new apartment that night. She opened the door, looking surprised and guilty. Daniel and Emma were inside, singing, laughing, celebrating without me. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice shaking. Maria sighed. "It's just better this way." "For who?" Daniel stepped forward, glaring. "For all of us. You ruin everything, Dad. Can't you see that?" I looked at him, my boy, my firstborn, and I saw only hatred where love used to be. I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat closed. I turned to leave, but Emma's voice stopped me. "Daddy," she whispered. I looked back, hope flickering, until she added softly, "Please don't come back." That was the last time I saw them as a family. I left town a week later, sold my tools, packed a bag, and disappeared. No goodbye notes, no explanations, just silence. Because sometimes, when love turns into pain, leaving feels like mercy. For years, I lived in small towns, fixing cars for strangers, sleeping in rooms that never felt like home. I sent money when I could, though I never knew if they received it. Birthdays passed, holidays blurred. I watched the seasons change and prayed that maybe, one day, they'd remember me kindly. But memory can be cruel, it keeps what hurts the most. And so I learned to live with the ache of what I'd lost, one breath at a time. Now, sitting in this cold motel room, I run my fingers over the bracelet again. Hope. I smile sadly. Back then, hope meant a future. Now, it's the only thing keeping the past from swallowing me whole. Tomorrow, I'll try again. I'll face Daniel, maybe even Emma if she'll see me. Not to ask for forgiveness, but to give it. Because somewhere between all the broken pieces, I still believe that love, once real, never truly dies. It just waits, patiently, in the shadows, for someone brave enough to come back home. The night I left still lives inside me, every sound, every word, every heartbeat. I used to think time would blur it, soften it. But even now, after 9 long years, it feels as vivid as yesterday. I can still hear the rain that night. It wasn't just falling, it was screaming. Wind howled through the cracks in the windows as if the whole world was trying to drown out our voices. That was the night everything broke for good. It started with a phone call. I was at the garage, wiping my hands on an old rag when my coworker Frank answered the shop phone. He looked at me strangely and said, "Mark, it's your son." Daniel's voice was shaking. "Dad, Mom's in the hospital." I didn't even ask what happened. I just dropped everything and ran. When I arrived, Maria was lying in the hospital bed, pale and weak. I saw Daniel sitting beside her, holding her hand, glaring at me when I entered. Emma was in the corner, quiet as a ghost. "What happened?" I whispered. Daniel didn't answer. He just looked at me with eyes that accused. The doctor said she'd collapse from exhaustion and stress. Stress, that word clung to me like a curse. When Maria finally opened her eyes, I rushed to her side. "I'm here," I said softly. She looked at me for a long time, her gaze distant. "Why, Mark?" "Why what?" "Why does it always hurt to love you?" Her words hit me harder than any blow. "I was trying," I said, my voice cracking. "Everything I did." "Was for you," she interrupted, tears rolling down her cheeks. "You always say that, but Mark, when did you ever ask what we needed?" I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but something inside me broke. I looked at her, this woman who once danced barefoot in our kitchen, who used to whisper my name like a prayer, and I realized I didn't recognize her anymore. Or maybe she didn't recognize me. A few days later, she came home. The air in the house was different, heavier, colder. Daniel stayed near her constantly, like her personal guard. Emma barely spoke. One evening, I found her in the kitchen, packing boxes. "What are you doing?" I asked. "I'm leaving." My chest tightened. "Maria, please don't do this." "I can't breathe here anymore, Mark." She looked at me, her eyes tired. "Every time I see you, I remember what we lost." "What did we lose?" I asked, my voice trembling. She smiled sadly. "Us." I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Is it him?" I whispered. "The man from the cafe." She froze. Her silence was my answer. I felt the room spin. "How long?" "Don't," she said firmly. "Don't make this uglier than it already is." "Uglier?" I laughed bitterly. "Maria, I gave you everything." "You gave me nothing that mattered," she cried. "You were here, but you weren't with us. You built a house, not a home." I stood there stunned as she continued packing. And that's when Daniel came in. "What's going on?" he asked, looking between us. Maria didn't speak. She just wiped her eyes and said, "Go upstairs, sweetheart." But he didn't move. He turned to me, his jaw clenched. "Did you hurt her again?" "Daniel," I snapped, "don't talk to me like that." He stepped closer. "You're the reason she's leaving. You don't care about any of us." "That's not true," I said, my voice breaking. "I love you, both of you. I've done everything for this family." He laughed, a cold, bitter sound far too old for a 16-year-old boy. "Love, you don't even know what that means." Maria grabbed his arm. "Stop it, both of you." But it was too late. Years of unspoken anger filled the room like poison. I slammed my hand on the table. "You think you know everything, Daniel? You think I wanted this?" "Then why are you always making us miserable?" he shouted. "Mom cries every night because of you." I looked at Maria, and she turned away. That small gesture destroyed me. Something inside me just broke. "Fine," I said quietly. "If you all think I'm the problem, maybe it's better if I'm gone." Daniel didn't say a word. He just stared at me, unblinking. Emma stood on the stairs, holding her teddy bear, watching everything. Maria turned her back, whispering, "Just go, Mark, please." The weight of that plea crushed me. I walked to the door. Each step felt like I was walking through fire. When I reached for the handle, Daniel's voice stopped me. "Don't come back." I left that night with nothing but a small duffel bag. The rain was merciless, drenching me within seconds. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay. I walked for hours, through streets I, once driven home on, past shops where people used to know my name. By dawn, I found myself sitting on a park bench, shivering, numb, empty. That was the first night I truly understood loneliness. It wasn't just being alone. It was being forgotten by the people you built your world around. The next morning, I called Maria. She didn't answer. I tried Daniel's number, disconnected. Days turned to weeks. The silence became my companion. I moved to a small town 2 hours away, found work fixing engines for a retired truck driver named Eddie. He didn't ask questions. I liked that. But even there, I carried ghosts. Every noise reminded me of home. Every father and son who walked into the shop twisted something inside me. At night, I'd sit outside my apartment, listening to the hum of distant cars, pretending they were driving toward me, bringing the sound of my children's laughter back. But they never did. A year passed. I sent letters, one every month. None were answered. In each one, I wrote the same thing: "I'm sorry, I love you, I'm still your father." Maybe they never reached them. Maybe they did, and they just didn't care. I can't blame them. I was the father I wanted to be. One afternoon, Eddie found me sitting on the shop floor, staring at a photograph. "Family?" he asked. I nodded. "Used to be." He lit a cigarette, took a long drag, and said, "You can fix cars, son, but you can't fix people unless they want to be fixed." I didn't answer, but his words stayed with me for years. Then one day, a letter came. Not from my children, from Maria. It was short, cold. "Mark, please stop sending letters. The kids are moving on. It's best you do the same. Maria." I read it 100 times, every word sliced deeper than the last. Moving on. What does that even mean when your whole life is still standing in the same house you built? I burned the letter that night, watched the flames devour the last piece of her handwriting. But fire doesn't erase pain. It only leaves ashes where love used to live. The years that followed were quiet, too quiet. I worked, ate, slept, repeat. No birthdays, no calls, no laughter. Sometimes I'd wake up from dreams where Daniel hugged me again, where Emma called me daddy. Those mornings were the hardest, waking up to a life that wasn't mine anymore. I grew older. My back began to ache, my hands stiffened. Eddie retired and I took over the small shop, but it never felt like mine. Every customer reminded me of what I'd lost. Fathers teaching sons how to drive, daughters waving at their dads from car windows. It was torture wrapped in routine. One winter morning, I saw something in the local paper. An engagement announcement. Daniel Carter and Rebecca Lane, to be married this spring. I froze, my son, my boy, getting married. He hadn't called, hadn't written. And yet there it was, his smiling face, her hand in his, happiness radiating from the page. I wanted to go, I almost did, but then I imagined the look on his face if I showed up uninvited. So I stayed away, like always. I drank that night, more than I should have. And for the first time, I admitted the truth to myself. They weren't mine anymore. Years passed, seasons came and went. I grew older, weaker. I thought about calling Emma once just to hear her voice, but fear always stopped me. Then, one day, Eddie's nephew came by the shop. He was on his phone, scrolling through pictures. I wasn't paying attention until he said a name. Daniel Carter. He's giving a talk at the university next week. My head snapped up. Daniel Carter. Yeah, some business guy, real success story, you know him. I smiled faintly. I used to. He showed me a picture, my son, wearing a suit, smiling with confidence. Beside him stood a woman and a little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old. The caption read, "Family man and entrepreneur Daniel Carter." I stared at that little girl. My granddaughter. Something inside me shifted that day, like a light flickering back on after years of darkness. That's when I decided. I had to see them again. Not to fix the past, it was far too broken for that. But to remind them I still existed. That love, even buried under anger, still breathes. So I sold the shop, packed a small bag, took the train back to the city I once called home. Every mile felt like traveling backward through time, through the laughter, the fights, the silence. By the time I stepped off the train, the city looked different. Taller, louder, faster, but one thing remained the same, the ache in my chest. I stood outside that familiar street again, watching from a distance, afraid to step closer. And that's where you found me, an old man in the rain, holding a gift for a child who didn't even know my name. I used to think the hardest part of losing a family was the night you walk away. I was wrong. The hardest part is every morning after, waking up and realizing the world kept going without you. The years after I left weren't filled with anger or bitterness, they were filled with silence. The kind that hums beneath your ribs and never lets you forget what you've lost. The first few months, I lived like a shadow. I rented a small room above a grocery store in a quiet town by the coast. It smelled of salt and loneliness, the kind of place people go when they've run out of places to go. The landlord was an old widow named Mrs. Green. She had soft eyes and too many cats. She never asked questions, and I never offered answers. That unspoken agreement was the closest thing to peace I'd had in years. I spent my days fixing boats at the harbor. My hands still knew what to do: tighten, weld, repair, but inside I was coming undone. Sometimes the fishermen would invite me to join them for lunch. I'd sit, nod, listen to their stories about their children, proud, simple stories about school plays or birthdays. I'd smile, pretending to care, pretending their laughter didn't stab at me like a knife. But every night, when the harbor quieted and the sea sighed against the shore, I'd sit alone outside my room, staring at the horizon, wondering if my children were looking at the same sky. I used to whisper their names into the wind: Daniel, Emma. Maybe, somehow, the wind carried them back to me. One evening, about a year after I'd left, Mrs. Green knocked on my door holding a small envelope. "No return address," she said. "It's for you." My heart raced. I tore it open, hoping foolishly for a letter from Daniel or Emma. But it wasn't from them, it was from Maria. Her handwriting was still the same, elegant, steady, confident. "Mark, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I hope you're well. The kids are okay. They're growing, learning to live again. I think that's what's best. Maybe one day they'll understand. Take care of yourself. Maria." No love, no warmth, just a few careful sentences to keep me alive but distant. I folded the letter neatly and kept it in my wallet for years. It was the only piece of them I had left. That night, I dreamed of her standing in our kitchen, humming softly while stirring soup. The smell of onions and thyme filled the air. When she turned to me, she smiled, and for a moment, I believed everything was okay again. Then I woke up, and the only thing I smelled was rust and sea salt. The years blurred together after that. Seasons came and went: winter winds, spring rain, summer sunsets, but every day felt the same. I got older, my hair thinned, my hands shook sometimes when I worked too long. The mirror became my enemy. There were nights I'd fall asleep with my tools still in my hands, because dreams were safer when you didn't let them start. And yet, despite everything, a small part of me still believed I'd see them again. I used to imagine Daniel walking into the shop one day, older, maybe a little softer, saying, "Dad, I'm sorry." Or Emma showing up, holding my old letters, whispering, "I never stopped missing you." But life doesn't give you cinematic reunions. It gives you small reminders of what you've lost and expects you to keep breathing anyway. One autumn afternoon, a man brought in an old car that reminded me of mine, a rusted blue Ford, the same model I drove when the kids were little. As I fixed the engine, I remembered a day from years before, a rare sunny Sunday when I'd taken Daniel and Emma for a drive to the lake. "Faster, Dad," Daniel yelled, sticking his head out the window, hair flying in the wind. "Not too fast," Emma giggled from the backseat, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Maria was beside me, laughing, her hand resting on mine. "You're such a child," she teased. I turned to look at her, her eyes shining, her smile effortless, and said, "I hope this never ends." But it did. Everything does. I leaned against the hood, eyes stinging, and whispered to no one, "I'm sorry I couldn't keep it." Years later, when I was 60, the doctors told me my heart wasn't what it used to be. "You need to slow down," they said. I laughed. I've been slowing down for 9 years. They didn't get the joke. I started taking pills, tiny reminders that even my body was tired of holding on. Mrs. Green passed away that same year. The cats scattered to neighbors, and I lost the only person who ever checked if I was still alive. The world was shrinking, first my family, then my friends, then my own strength. But fate has a strange way of stirring things, just when you think you've accepted your ending. It was a quiet afternoon when I overheard 2 fishermen talking near the docks. "Did you hear about that Carter boy?" one of them said. Opened some big company in the city, married, kid on the way. Carter, I asked, my voice trembling. Yeah, Daniel Carter, I think. Smart kid. From around here originally, I think his mom still lives somewhere near the city. My chest tightened. Daniel, my son. I went home that night and searched my old wallet. I still had Maria's letter, the address on the envelope smudged but faintly visible. The next morning, I packed my things. For the first time in 9 years, I decided to go home. The journey back felt endless. The bus rumbled through towns I barely recognized, past fields that looked like the ones Daniel used to draw as a kid. Bright skis, green hills, stick figures holding hands. I arrived in the city at sunset. Everything was louder, faster, more distant. The air smelled of exhaust and rain. I asked around, followed small clues, a friend's name, an old address, until I finally found it. The street where we once lived. When I saw the house, my knees nearly gave out. It was the same, the white paint, the small porch, the wind chime I hung years ago that still danced in the breeze. For a long time, I just stood there, watching. I saw shadows move inside, laughter, footsteps, the kind of life I used to know. And then I saw her, a little girl with curly hair, chasing a small ball across the living room floor. My breath caught in my throat. My granddaughter. I watched her laugh, twirl, fall, and get scooped up by Daniel, older now, but still unmistakably my son. He held her close, kissed her forehead, and smiled. I hadn't seen that smile since he was 10. Something inside me broke, but not from pain this time, from pride, from love, from the unbearable beauty of seeing my blood alive and happy. I whispered to myself, "You did it, son." Then I turned away. Because sometimes, love means watching from a distance. I rented a small motel nearby. I told myself I'd only stay a few days just to see them, to know they were okay. But one night turned into two into 5. I couldn't leave, not yet. I'd walk by the house every evening just to hear the laughter through the windows. I'd imagine Emma's voice too, though I hadn't seen her. Where was she now? Did she ever think of me? On the 6th night, as I stood under the streetlight, the front door opened, and Daniel stepped out to throw away the trash. My heart leapt into my throat. He looked older, successful, confident, but there was something in his posture, a hint of the boy who used to look up to me. I wanted to call his name, I almost did. But fear is louder than love sometimes. So I stayed silent, hidden behind the rain, watching him return to the warmth I could no longer claim. Later that night, I sat in the motel with the pink box in my lap, the bracelet inside glimmering under the dim light. I bought it 2 days earlier, after seeing my granddaughter through the window. It was engraved with a single word, hope. I didn't know if I'd ever get to give it to her. But I needed her to have something from me, something that said, your grandfather existed. He loved you, even if you never met him. I placed it gently back in the box and closed my eyes. Maybe tomorrow, I'd knock on the door. Maybe tomorrow, Daniel would open it, and just for a second, remember that I was once his hero. Maybe tomorrow. But that night, I dreamed again. Maria was standing at the edge of the sea, holding a small child, our granddaughter, I think. She smiled at me, her voice carried by the wind. Go to them, Mark, she whispered. It's time. When I woke, the sunrise was bleeding through the curtains. My chest ached, but my heart felt lighter than it had in years. I looked at the pink box and smiled. Tomorrow had finally come. The morning I decided to return to that house, the world felt strangely quiet, as if even the wind was holding its breath. For 9 years, I'd rehearsed this moment in my head 1,000 times. Every version ended differently. Sometimes they hugged me, sometimes they slammed the door. But not once did I imagine what really happened. I put on my best shirt, the one Maria gave me on our 10th anniversary, though the collar was frayed and the fabric smelled faintly of mothballs. I combed my thinning hair, brushed my shoes, and stared at my reflection. I looked old, not just older, old. Lines had carved stories into my face, and my eyes carried the weight of all the words I never said. Still, I whispered to myself, you're going home. I picked up the pink box and slipped it into my coat pocket. When I reached the street, my hands began to shake. There it was, the same house, the same blue door, the same porch swing that used to creak under the weight of Daniel and Emma when they were small. For a moment, I almost turned back. I wasn't sure if I wanted to open old wounds or protect the scar that had finally stopped bleeding. Then I saw her again, my granddaughter. She was sitting on the steps, playing with a small toy, her curls bouncing in the sunlight. She looked like Emma. My throat tightened, my feet moved before I could stop them. "Hi there," I said softly, afraid to scare her. She looked up, eyes wide but curious. "Hi." Her voice was pure, light, innocent, the kind of voice that could melt through years of silence. "What's your name?" I asked gently. "Lily," she said, smiling shyly. "Who are you?" I hesitated. "I'm a friend of your dad's." She tilted her head, studying me. "You look sad." I chuckled weakly, maybe a little. She reached into her pocket and held up a tiny sticker. "You can have this. Stickers make people happy." My heart broke and healed in the same breath. "Thank you, sweetheart," I whispered. That's when I heard it, a voice I hadn't heard in almost a decade. "Lily, what did I tell you about talking to strangers?" Daniel's voice. He stepped out onto the porch, his tone firm, protective, the same way I used to sound when he was little. Lily turned and pointed at me. "But he's nice, Daddy." Daniel's eyes followed her hand, and when he saw me, everything froze. His expression hardened instantly, like a storm sweeping over calm waters. "Dad," he said flatly. I swallowed hard. "Hello, Danny." He stepped closer, his jaw tight. "What are you doing here?" I could feel Lily's eyes on me, confused, curious. I forced a smile. "I came to see you, to see all of you." He didn't return the smile. "Now's not a good time." He said it the same way he did the first night I came back. Cold, controlled, final. But this time, I didn't step back. "I've waited 9 years for a good time," I said softly. "It never came." He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "You shouldn't have come here, Dad. You made your choice." "My choice," I echoed, a tremor in my voice. "Danny, you told me to leave." "Because you deserved to," he snapped. "You broke this family. Your mother and I's." "Don't," he interrupted sharply. "Don't talk about Mom, you don't get to." I took a step closer. "You don't know everything that happened, son." "I know enough," he said coldly. "She cried every night because of you." My throat burned, and I cried every night because I lost you. Something flickered in his eyes, not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe confusion. Pain. "Please," I said, voice breaking, "just let me explain." But before he could answer, his wife came outside. Rebecca. I'd seen her before through the window, kind face, calm eyes. She looked between us, sensing the tension. "Daniel, who is this?" Lily answered before he could. "Daddy, he said he's your friend." Daniel hesitated, his mouth tightening. "He's not." I cut him off. "I'm his father." Rebecca froze. Lily looked from one to the other, her little brow furrowing. "You're my grandpa." The word hit me like lightning. Grandpa. No one had called me that before. I nodded slowly, tears threatening. "Yes, sweetheart, I guess I am." Daniel's voice hardened again. "You need to go, Dad." Rebecca touched his arm. "Wait, maybe we should hear him out." He turned to her, frustrated. "You don't understand." "No," she said softly, "but maybe Lily should know her grandfather." The air hung heavy between us. Finally, Daniel sighed. 5 minutes, that's all. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. He led me inside. The smell of home hit me like a wave. Cinnamon, coffee, and a faint trace of the cologne I used to wear. The furniture was new, the pictures on the wall unfamiliar. But the clock above the mantel, that was mine. The same one I'd built with my own hands decades ago. I reached out to touch it. "You kept it." Daniel didn't answer. He just folded his arms. Lily climbed into my lap without hesitation, holding the toy car she'd been playing with. "Daddy said you used to fix cars too." I smiled, heart aching. "That's right, I used to fix everything." Daniel scoffed under his breath. "Except your family." His words hit like a slap, but I didn't respond. I'd said enough harsh things in my life, it was time to listen. "I'm not here to reopen old wounds," I said quietly. "I just wanted to see you, to tell you I'm sorry." Daniel looked away, his jaw clenched. "Sorry doesn't change anything." "No," I said softly, "but it's all I have left to give." Rebecca reached for his hand. Daniel, maybe it's time to let it go. He shook his head. You don't know what he did, what he didn't do. Mom, his voice cracked, the anger faltering. Mom begged him to change, and he never did. My heart felt like glass. I didn't know how, I said. I thought working hard was love. I thought giving you everything you wanted would be enough. It was. I know that now, I whispered. He looked at me, eyes burning. Why now, Dad? Why after all these years? I took the pink box from my pocket and placed it on the table. Because of her, I said, nodding to Lily. I wanted her to have something from me, something good, before I'm gone. Rebecca frowned. Gone. I smiled faintly. I'm not as strong as I used to be. Daniel stared at the box, his expression unreadable. You can't just show up here and... I'm not asking you to forgive me, I interrupted. I just needed you to know I never stopped loving you, not for a single day. Silence filled the room. Even Lily stopped moving. Then, from upstairs, I heard footsteps. A voice, soft, familiar. Daniel, what's going on down there? I froze. I knew that voice. Emma. She came down the stairs slowly, holding a mug of tea. Her hair was longer now, darker, but those eyes, Maria's eyes, stopped my heart. When she saw me, the mug slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Dad, she whispered. I couldn't speak, my throat closed. Tears filled her eyes as she took a step forward, then stopped. Is it really you? I nodded, barely managing to breathe. It's me, sweetheart. She covered her mouth, sobbing softly. Daniel turned away, packing, torn between anger and confusion. I wanted to reach out to her, to hold her, to tell her I never stopped thinking of her, but I didn't move. Why now? She asked, voice trembling. Why after everything? Because I couldn't die without seeing you again, I said simply. Her face crumpled. Don't say that. I mean it, I whispered. I've spent 9 years punishing myself for what I did, for what I didn't do. I just needed you to know I never meant to hurt you, any of you. Daniel clenched his fists. You always say that, Dad, but you never change, you ran away. I didn't run, I said softly. I was pushed. The room went still. Emma looked between us. You both did wrong, all of us did. Her words were simple, but they pierced through everything. Daniel looked at her, his expression softening slightly. You can't just... Yes, I can, she said firmly. We were kids, Daniel, we didn't understand, but I do now. He wasn't perfect, but neither was Mom. He froze. I watched him, my son, my pride, my pain, finally lose the tightness in his shoulders. For the first time, I saw the little boy I used to carry on my shoulders, the one who used to say, Dad, don't ever leave. His voice broke when he finally said it. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't expect you to, I said gently, just don't hate me anymore. He didn't answer, but he didn't turn away either. That was enough. We sat in silence for a while. Lily climbed onto my lap again, oblivious to the storm she'd unknowingly calmed. Grandpa, she said softly, can you stay for dinner? Daniel looked like he might protest, but he didn't. I smiled, tears spilling over. I'd like that, sweetheart, I'd like that very much. That evening, I watched them, my children, grown, distant, but alive. The air was thick with unspoken memories, yet somehow lighter. For the first time in years, I felt like I was home again. Even if only for one night. Dinner that night was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet where every clink of a spoon or scrape of a chair sounds like thunder. We all sat at the same table, me, Daniel, Emma, Rebecca, little Lily, sharing a meal for the first time in almost a decade. I never thought I'd see that day. Lily's laughter was the only thing that made it bearable. She talked about school, her friends, her favorite cartoon. Her innocence was a fragile thread holding us together, pretending this was just another family dinner, not the reunion of ghosts. Every time she smiled at me, something inside me healed and broke again. Grandpa, she said between bites of pasta, Daddy said you used to fix cars. Can you teach me one day? Daniel froze mid-bite, his fork clinked against his plate. I smiled gently, pretending not to notice. If your dad lets me, sweetheart, I'll teach you everything I know. She grinned, beaming. You promise? I promise, I said softly. I caught Daniel's eyes across the table. He looked away, his jaw tightening. Emma spoke next, perhaps to break the tension. "Lily, how about you show Grandpa your drawing after dinner?" "Okay," she said cheerfully, hopping in her chair. Rebecca smiled faintly, trying to keep things warm. But underneath, the air was thick with everything we weren't saying. I could feel my heartbeat echoing through the silence, not from nerves, but from something heavier. My chest had been aching on and off for days, and tonight it felt worse. But I didn't care, not tonight. I wanted to stay, to see them, to freeze this moment, however fragile it was. After dinner, I helped clear the table. Rebecca tried to stop me. "Please, sit, you're our guest." I smiled. I've been gone too long to be just a guest. She hesitated, then nodded, her eyes softening. "Daniel doesn't talk about the past much," she said quietly, "but I know losing you hurt him." I looked down at the dish towel in my hands. "I hurt him first." She didn't reply, but her silence was kind. Later, we sat in the living room. The rain had started again, soft, rhythmic, forgiving. Lily was showing me her drawings. Most were bright, colorful rainbows, cats her family. Then I noticed one. It was of a man standing outside a house in the rain, holding a box. Inside the window, a little girl was waving. I stared at it frozen. "Who's that, sweetheart?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She smiled. "That's you, Grandpa. I saw you that day from the window." I looked up at Daniel, who had gone pale. You saw me." He nodded slowly. She kept saying a man was outside watching the house. I didn't believe her. I exhaled shakily. I wasn't watching, I was just remembering. Emma reached over and touched my hand. "You never stopped coming back, did you?" I shook my head. "Not once." The air grew heavier then. Daniel set his glass down, his voice steady but cold. "You should have stayed away." Emma frowned. "Daniel." "No," he said sharply. "He can't just walk in and pretend like everything's fine." "I'm not pretending," I said quietly. "Then what are you doing here?" His voice rose. "After everything, after Mom." "Don't," I said softly, but he kept going. "She died thinking you didn't care." The room went silent. The world tilted. "What?" I whispered. Daniel's eyes were hard. "She got sick 2 years after you left, cancer. She didn't even tell you because she didn't think you'd come." I couldn't breathe, my hands went numb. She's gone." Emma's voice cracked. "She didn't want us to tell you. She said you deserved peace. But she asked us to forgive you one day." I felt my chest cave in, like the air had been ripped from my lungs. I whispered her name, Marya, and it came out as a sob. She can't be." Emma moved closer, holding my arm. "Dad, it's okay. It's been years." "No," I said, shaking my head violently. "It's not okay. I wasn't there. She needed me and I." My voice broke completely. I failed her. Tears streamed down my face, hot and relentless. Daniel's voice trembled now too. "She asked for you, at the end. She said your name, Dad, but you weren't there." Each word was a bullet, and I took every one of them. "I didn't know," I whispered. "If I had known, I—" "But you did," he shouted. "You left, you gave up on us." "Because you told me to," I cried. "You told me to leave, Daniel. You looked me in the eye and said, 'Don't come back.' And I listened. I thought it's what you wanted." He froze, guilt flashing through his eyes. "I was a kid." "I know," I said softly. "And I was your father. I should have fought harder. I should have come back sooner." Tears spilled down his cheeks, silent and raw. "I hated you for so long," he whispered. "I hated myself too," I said. The room fell silent again. Only the sound of the rain and Lily's soft breathing as she slept on the couch beside Rebecca. Emma wiped her tears and whispered, "Mom forgave you, Dad. Maybe not with words, but she did. Before she died, she said, 'Tell him I understand.'" That broke me completely. I pressed my trembling hands to my face and sobbed, the kind of sob that comes from years of holding everything in. Emma cried too. Daniel sat there, eyes red, chest heaving, the boy and the man inside him colliding all at once. When I finally looked up, I saw it, the smallest crack in his armor. He whispered, "I don't know how to stop being angry." I reached out, my voice fragile. "Then be angry, but don't let it eat you the way it ate me." He stared at me for a long time. Then, slowly, he reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. It wasn't forgiveness. but it was something far deeper, understanding. We sat like that for what felt like hours. No words, no noise, just rain and old hearts trying to heal. Then I felt it again, the pain in my chest, sharp, sudden, crushing. At first, I thought it was the emotion, the grief, the exhaustion. But then it spread up my arm, into my jaw. I gasped. "Dad," Emma's voice broke through the fog. "Dad, are you okay?" I tried to answer, but the words wouldn't come. My hand went limp. "Call an ambulance," Daniel shouted, his voice filled with panic. Everything became a blur. Footsteps, voices, the room spinning. I fell forward, clutching the table as darkness closed in. And just before I blacked out, I felt small fingers touch mine. "Grandpa." Lily's voice, tiny, terrified. I wanted to tell her not to cry, to tell them all I was okay. But my lips wouldn't move. The last thing I saw was Daniel kneeling beside me, tears streaming down his face, yelling, "Dad, stay with me. Please stay." Then everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, everything was white. A hospital ceiling, the smell of antiseptic, the steady beep of a heart monitor. I tried to sit up, but pain anchored me down. Daniel was sitting beside the bed, his head in his hands. When he saw me move, he stood quickly. "Dad, don't move." I managed a faint smile. "You sound like me when you were little." He laughed through his tears. "You scared us." "I scare myself sometimes," I whispered. Emma entered the room, her eyes red. She held my hand gently. "You had a heart attack, Dad. They said it was bad." I nodded slowly. "Figures." Daniel looked away, swallowing hard. "The doctor said you were lucky." I smiled faintly. "No, Daniel, I was blessed." He frowned. "What do you mean?" I looked at both of them. "Because I got to see you again, I got to tell you I'm sorry, and I got to hear your voices one last time." "Don't say that," Emma cried. But I could feel it, the heaviness in my chest, the growing calm, the kind that whispers it's time. "Listen to me," I said weakly. "You both need to live. Don't make the same mistake I did waiting until it's too late to say how you feel." Daniel's tears fell freely now. "Dad, please stop." I squeezed his hand. "You're a good man, Daniel. You turned out better than I ever was. And Emma," I turned to her, my voice trembling, "you've got your mother's heart. Don't let the world harden it." She sobbed, "Don't leave us again." I smiled softly. "I'm not leaving, I'm just going where she is." Her tears fell onto my hand. "Tell Lily," my voice weakened. "Tell her grandpa loves her, always." The monitor beeped faster, then slower. I looked at my son one last time. "Danny," I whispered, barely audible, "thank you for letting me come home." He held my hand tightly, his voice breaking. "I love you, Dad." I smiled a weak, peaceful smile. "I know." And then, quietly, I let go. The monitor went flat. The room filled with the sound of their sobs. Outside, the rain stopped. The world went still. The rain had stopped by morning. A soft mist hung over the hospital parking lot, turning everything into shades of gray. The world felt muted, like even nature was grieving. I wasn't there to see the sunrise that day, at least, not in the way I used to. But I'd like to believe I was watching somehow, from somewhere quiet, somewhere peaceful. Because that morning, my son stood by my hospital bed, holding my hand long after my heart had stopped. And he cried. He cried not like a grown man, but like the boy who once ran into my arms after scraping his knee, the boy who once said, "Don't ever leave, Dad." Now I had. Daniel didn't say much after the doctors left. He just sat there, eyes red, fingers tracing the wrinkles on my cold hand. Emma stood near the window, her shoulders trembling. Rebecca was in the hallway with Lily, trying to explain something no child should ever have to understand. When Emma finally turned around, she said softly, "He's gone, Danny." Daniel nodded, but he didn't let go. "He came back," he whispered. "He came back, and I still didn't forgive him." Emma walked over and placed her hand on his shoulder. "He didn't need your forgiveness. He just needed you to know he never stopped loving us." He looked up, eyes shining with tears, and I made him die thinking I hated him. She shook her head. "No, he knew. You said it, Daniel. You told him." He swallowed hard. "I only said it because he was dying." That's when it matters most. They buried me a week later. It was a small funeral, quiet, humble, just the way I would have wanted. The rain returned that morning, gentle and cold, washing over the cemetery like tears from the sky. Daniel stood beside my coffin, his hand resting on the polished wood. Emma stood beside him, holding a bouquet of lilies, the same flowers Maria loved. Lily clutched the small pink box I'd left behind. Rebecca kept an arm around her, whispering softly that Grandpa had gone to sleep in heaven, that he'd be watching them from the stars. When the priest finished speaking, Daniel stepped forward, his voice trembling. "My father wasn't perfect," he began. "He made mistakes, a lot of them. But so did I for years. I blamed him for everything that went wrong. I thought hatting him would make the pain easier. It didn't." He paused, breathing shakily. "He taught me how to build things, how to fix things, but I never realized he was trying to fix us all along, and I never let him." Emma wiped her tears. Daniel's voice broke as he said, "I just hope wherever he is, he knows I love him. I always did." The wind rustled through the trees, soft and slow, almost like an answer. After the burial, Emma and Daniel stayed behind while everyone else left. The grave was simple, a small stone with my name, 2 dates, and a single line engraved beneath. "He loved quietly but deeply." It was Emma's idea. She knelt, brushing away the rain that had gathered on the stone. "You can rest now, Dad," she whispered. "You're home." Daniel stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, staring at the ground. His lips parted as if he wanted to say something, then closed again. He finally whispered, "I wish I'd called sooner." Emma looked up at him. "We all wish we'd done things differently." He nodded, then turned his gaze toward the sky. "Mom always said he was stubborn. I guess that's where I got it." Emma laughed softly through her tears. "Yeah, that and his terrible jokes." Daniel smiled for the first time that day. They stood there for a long time, brother and sister, mourning not just the man they lost, but the years they never got to have with him. And yet, in their grief, something shifted. The wall that had stood between them since childhood began to crumble piece by piece. That night, back at Daniel's house, Lily sat on the living room floor, holding the bracelet I'd given her. She traced the word hope with her tiny fingers. "Mommy," she asked, "is Grandpa really gone?" Rebecca knelt beside her. "He's gone from here, baby, but he's still with us, in here." She pointed to Lily's heart. Lily looked down at the bracelet again. "He said he would teach me to fix cars." Rebecca smiled softly. "Maybe your daddy can teach you instead." Daniel, standing in the doorway, overheard them. His throat tightened. He walked over and crouched beside Lily. "Yeah," he said, forcing a small smile. "Grandpa taught me everything I know. I'll teach you too. That's what he'd want." Lily looked up, her eyes bright. "Promise." He nodded, "Promise." She hugged him tightly. "I miss him." "Me too," he whispered, his voice breaking. Later that night, Daniel sat alone in his study. On the desk lay a small stack of envelopes, all addressed in my handwriting. The hospital had found them in my bag, each one neatly sealed, each one bearing a name. He hesitated, then opened the first. "My son, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get to say everything I wanted to, so I'll say it here. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I want you to know I forgive you. For every angry word, for every silence, for every wall between us. You were just a boy trying to protect your mother. I understand that now. You're a good man, Daniel. I see your strength, your love, your heart. Don't let guilt steal the rest of your life. Love your family the way I couldn't. Be present, be kind, be better than me. And if you ever doubt how much I loved you, look at your daughter. Every time she smiles, you'll see it." "Dad." Daniel folded the letter slowly, tears dripping onto the paper. He pressed it to his chest, closing his eyes. Then he opened the second letter, the one addressed to Emma. "My little girl. You were my light, the laughter in our house, the softness your mother carried in her smile. I know I missed too much, your birthdays, your school plays, your tears. I thought providing was enough. I was wrong. But know this, not a day went by that I didn't think of you. You are your mother's heart and my stubborn spirit. That's a dangerous combination and a beautiful one. Don't let the world harden you. Don't be afraid to love deeply, even if it hurts. Because love, real love, is worth every scar." "Dad." By the time Daniel finished reading, his tears had stained both pages. He sat there, surrounded by silence, feeling something he hadn't felt in years, peace. For the first time, the weight in his chest began to lift. He looked up at the photo on the wall, a picture of him, Rebecca, and Lily at the beach. He smiled faintly. "You did it, Dad," he whispered. "You finally came home." Months passed, seasons changed. Life moved forward as it always does. But some things linger. Every Sunday, Daniel and Emma visited my grave together. They'd bring fresh lilies and talk about their week, their memories, their children. Sometimes they argued. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they just sat in silence, letting the wind speak for them. Lily always came too. She'd sit cross-legged on the grass, playing with her bracelet, humming softly to herself. One day, she asked, "Do you think Grandpa can hear us?" Daniel smiled gently. "I think he can." "How do you know?" He looked at the same sky that had once felt so empty to me, and said, "Because I can feel him every time I laugh with you." Lily smiled. "Then I'll laugh extra loud so he knows we're okay." And she did. Her laughter filled the air, bright and pure, the kind of sound that can reach heaven if you listen closely enough. I like to imagine that's how they remember me, not as the man who left, but as the man who tried to come back. In the end, I didn't get a lifetime with them, but I got something better, forgiveness. It came too late for my living years, but just in time for my soul. And maybe that's the lesson buried beneath all the pain, the years, the silence. That love doesn't disappear just because we fail to say it. That sometimes, forgiveness is the only language left between the living and the dead. If you're reading this, if you've ever pushed someone away, or waited too long to call, or let pride build walls around your heart, please don't. Say what you need to say, now, before time steals your chance to. Because one day, all that will remain are echoes of words left unspoken, and love that still lingers quietly in the rain.